Well, it's finally time to talk about Atlanta United, but before we get into all of the details and stuff, I do have a little bit of help for any fans that want to protest against what we're seeing on the pitch currently. Because a few games ago in the Chicago match, I was so bored that I actually came up with a chant that we could all use together to hopefully show how much we hate the way things are currently going and how much there needs to be a change. So if you want to look up the chant that this is based on, it's the Will Griggs on Fire chant, which is phenomenal. But I changed the words a little bit, so it goes a little something like this. Sack Ronny Deila, we're playing like a dumpster fire. Sack Ronny Deila, he should have never been higher. Sack Ronny Deila, we're playing like a dumpster fire. Sack Ronny Deila. Na 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 na. What's up, guys, and welcome to the Blues and Stripes for the very first Atlanta United video on the channel, because it's been a long time coming. I have a lot to say about this club, and I have for a long time, but I feel like it would just be way too long of a video if I went into every single detail that has gone wrong since Tata Martino left. So instead, we're just going to focus on the here and now, and why Ronny Deila was a terrible manager, why we are currently seeing probably our worst run of form maybe since the end of DeBoer's term here, and also look at some of the transfer business that's been done, because we have done a few things, but once again, as is normal with this transfer board, they're all terrible moves. But first, we will focus on the current run of form. I've only really watched the games that have been home games because my family still has season tickets. The stadium has Annie Ann's in it, so I'm going to go to the home games. I'm not really going to have a good time. I'm not expecting wins, but I'll go to the games if I have time because, heck, why not? It's not like I'm having to pay extra for it outside of obviously paying for the Annie Ann's. The only away game that I've watched recently has been the game last night against Pumas. And the only home game that I haven't seen recently has been the first game of the League's Cup match against Necaxa. I don't know how to pronounce it, and I'm too lazy to look it up. But I did have prior obligations that night, and I did tune in for just a little bit around the time of the second goal. So that's the frame of reference that I'm working with, which some people may look at and go, okay, well, that's not very much. You're not watching every single game in and out. So how are you going to be able to talk about the state of the club when you're not watching the performances? Because I have seen enough. In the few home matches that I've watched recently, in the game last night against Pumas, I've seen enough to know what the problem is. I guess I should say what the problems are, because there are a few, but the main one at the moment is we have a manager who is dumb as a bag of bricks. And I can't remember if I did a video at the beginning of this season on my previous channel or not, but I do remember saying when he first was brought in, I was very concerned about this appointment. Because looking at his CV, he doesn't stay at a club very long. His past 5 jobs, I think, he's not been there more than a year. And yet we're going to trust this guy to come in and change the way things are? We have been rock bottom for a long time. One of my biggest problems with Pineda when he was signed on as manager is we were in a rough place. We were bottom of the barrel, and we go and get a manager who's never managed before. He was assistant manager at Seattle. For his first head coach job, he's going to come into this club that is in a crisis, and now has to try to fix it. He was not ready for that job, and now we're still in crisis. Things have not gotten better. We had a decent little run at the end of last season, but we still are not good. But we do get some good signings, players that I think could be good if we get the right manager in to utilize them correctly. But then we go get a guy who's not been successful. Why are we not going and getting a manager that is at the top level? I'm not saying a European giant like Ancelotti or Mourinho or Klopp or Guardiola. I'm not saying any guys like that, but go get a manager that is qualified. Go get a guy who knows what he's doing, at least at a competency level that is higher than the MLS. And from what I can tell, Deila, his competency level isn't even at the MLS standard. And to illustrate that, we'll talk about the match last night because it's very similar to the past few matches that we've had. In fact, I'm going to bring up a tweet that I made before the game started. This was a response to the club's lineup tweet. I said I can't wait to be tied or up 1 at halftime before Deila makes changes to the back line and then we can see 2 or 3 in the second half. What happened last night? Now granted, the equalizer did come before the defensive changes were made, but then he switched out both center backs. Gregerson and Mihaj both come off, and we ended the game with Hernandez and Schlich in the back line. How is that okay? It's ridiculous. Hernandez is probably one of the worst fullbacks in the league, and he constantly ends up in the center back spot. If your center backs are not capable of playing the full 90 minutes, they shouldn't be playing, because center backs do not change. You go to most other leagues, honestly, probably most teams in the MLS don't change their center backs, because that's not something you do. It doesn't give you consistency back there, which is what you need. So you keep them in for the full 90 unless there's an injury. but we are constantly switching up one or both of our center backs every single match. And Deila's sitting there in post-match press conferences, oh, I don't know why we're conceding so many goals. It's so obvious. We also talk about the mentality that we come out with in the second half. We do come out very slow. We do come out not ready to play. And what's Deila's response? Oh, I don't know why we come out so slow. Here, Deila, let me help you a little bit. Here you go, Deila. Take a look at this and tell me what the problem is. It should be right in there for you. And unfortunately, he's just not changing. And it's getting to a point where we are seeing the same problem every single match. We've seen our attack get a little bit better. I still think when you look at the talent we have up there, we should be more effective going forward than we are. But we have started to put in more goals every single match. But the problem is we're conceding so much because of all of these defensive changes that he makes every single match, whether it's at halftime, whether it's at 60 minutes. Changing out one or both of your center backs is no way to win a match. And if it's because the center backs are not fully fit, that's a problem. They should be fit enough to play the 90 minutes. I will also say there's not really much tactics-wise to speak of. I just don't see any sort of tactical plan. Like sometimes we look to break down the field quickly, we knock it around, keep the ball moving, try to get out in the wide spaces, try to cross it in for somebody. But then sometimes we like to try to play through the middle out of nowhere. It feels like our tactics are constantly changing, which isn't always a bad thing because sometimes you do want to change based on your opponent because you're not going to play the same way against one of the bottom teams in the league as you would against one of the top teams in the league. Also, same home and away. But the problem is the tactics in the match feel like they are constantly fluctuating. It doesn't feel like we go into a match with a single game plan. It feels like the game plan switches so often. And once again, just like changing your center backs, you're constantly switching what your tactics are. It's hard to get any consistency. So Deila just needs to go. He has been probably the worst managerial appointment at the club, which is even worse considering we had one manager that tortured the players, but I'm even saying Heinze was better because at least we saw some decent results at the beginning. But moving on from Deila, we will talk about the players that are being signed and the players we have at the club because it's not good enough. Defensively, we have not been good enough since Parkhurst left. We have not put together a solid back line without a true leader back there. I know some people will look and say, well, Guzan's a leader. Yeah, but he's not a defensive leader. He's not organizing like Parkhurst was. He's not capable of cleaning up messes like Parkhurst was. We don't have that marshal in the back that's going to lead everybody else and make sure everybody's doing their jobs, talking to the midfielders, talking to his other defensive partner. So defensively, we've just been a joke for the past few years. And some people will give them credit because we've now signed 2 defenders, which we'll talk about them individually in a minute. But the problem is we should have signed defenders back in January when that transfer window was open, because we did not have a good defense last season. Gregerson and Williams, decent players, 2 injury prone. And then the cover behind them, a Brom. And then past that, it was just young players. So you can't really rely on those young players yet. But the biggest problem that we've had is our fullbacks are awful. We have no good fullbacks. If you look at our current crop, you've got Amador, who is decent at times, but defensively he can be a real liability. But he puts in a good cross. Lennon is a joke now. He used to be kind of reliable because he was at least a hard worker. He wasn't great technically, but at the very least he worked hard. He could win the ball back for you. He's just up and down the line. But now he's not doing nearly as much of that. And you could see last night his performance was awful. Hernandez shouldn't even be an MLS player. He'd be lucky to make it in the USL. He is a joke of a player. And then past that, we've got Edwards. They just played I don't remember his name, Sesic, I think. Probably another young player. So we've got nothing past those 3 outside of young and inexperienced players. We need to improve our fullbacks. I'm not saying we've had phenomenal fullbacks in the past, but at the very least, we had players that could do the job. We had players who could go in there and be consistent enough to not make mistakes, to be defensively solid. And I know some people will look to the crosses being put in by Amador, and if all you're using to defend a fullback is their crosses, that's not good enough. They need to be defensively solid. That is their main job. If they're also good going forward putting crosses in, fantastic. I'm glad to have a player like that. But right now, we have too many defensive frailties on those wide positions, and they're not getting better. We're not bringing in better players there, and that's a problem. Midfield-wise, we seem to be okay. I think Schleich has started to show a little bit of quality defensively, become a bit of a destroyer in there, which is good to see. Muyumba has been pretty hit and miss. He's had some really good games where he's gotten on the ball in the midfield and looked creative, looked to break out of the pressure, but then some games he gives the ball away every other touch. So it's really hard to say that I trust him fully. Past that, we've got Fortune, who really stepped up this season and has looked much better. He's a player that I never thought was going to make it in the MLS. This season, he looks like an MLS player. He looks solid enough to play in this league. Now, granted, saying he's an MLS player is not really a compliment for me, but he looks good enough to play here now, which is good to see. But unfortunately, he's out injured for the rest of the season. I think Riley has stepped in and looked pretty good. I think he's a player that does probably need a bit more time, though, before he's ready to truly play at this level. But he has come in and he's done well, so good to see from him there. I would say I still want a more consistent player than Muyumba in the middle. But for what it is right now, I don't think midfield is our main focus because I think we've got enough cover in there to be solid. As far as the attacking players, I mean, we've got a lot of talent. Up top, Latela, he's not been phenomenal, but he still has a lot of quality that I think a better manager could bring out those better qualities and make him a better striker. I think Tiare's coming off the bench and looking really good as that kind of last-minute, hard-working bully that you want out of a striker. Saba is still a very hard worker, not always the most clinical, but he's getting in those good positions. He's really working hard to win the ball back too, which is good. Almiron hasn't really hit the heights that I was hoping he would coming back to the MLS, but I also do think that Deila's just not using him correctly. He's the type of player that you want to get him behind because he's so rapid, and so breaking with pace is what you want to do with him, but we don't really do that all the time. I would say we do it maybe about 30% of the time. And then Moranchuk, I mean, he's there. He has some really good shots. He's scored a couple brilliant goals in the last minute to save a point, but I look at his overall play and he's just not good enough to be a 10. He's actually looked better playing deeper. I don't know why, because he's not the hardest worker, so you would think playing deeper he would have to be a bit more defensively solid. But yet somehow he still does the job pretty well. And then he gets on the ball deeper. He's decent at knocking the ball around when he's not got 5 guys converging on him when he's at the 10. So it's weird that he actually does look better almost as an 8. But of course, Deila doesn't want to use him there. He'd rather use him as a 10 because he's an idiot. So we've not seen the best of Moranchuk since probably our last win, now I'm thinking about it, because I'm not the type of person that just looks at the highlight reel and goes, oh, he scored a goal. He did a great job today. No. He has to play well throughout the entire match, and he doesn't. We honestly don't have much cover in those positions. Brennan has looked okay, but he's still young. I know he just signed a guy from Inter Miami who doesn't really play, so that's brilliant. And I think they've got somebody else, Tagashi, who we see every so often come on. I think he's more of a striker, but I think he can play a little bit deeper as well. So once again, I do think defense is much more important to pick up players for than the attack. But I just wanted to quickly look through some of those players and kind of give my thoughts about where we need to improve. But let's look at what we have done in the transfer window in a bit more detail. All right, so I went ahead and pulled up our full transfer list here, and you can see we have done a little bit of business. You know, we've got Alfonso in, we've got Mihaj, we got Barakal. I don't know if I'm pronouncing any of those correctly, but whatever. And then we had Sanchez come up from the 2s at one point. We also had Cobb and Torres go out on loan, so this is, as you can see, the end of their loan. For some reason, it puts them in arrivals. And then down here, Morales, Cleach, Cobb, Mascara, Abram. So those are all the players going out. So before we talk about the players coming in a bit more detail, looking at the players going out, Cleach, I don't have an issue with. He was not a good pickup. Could have potentially been the experienced midfielder that sort of is the connecting glue, kind of what we saw from Laurentowicz. But unfortunately, he was not at all like Laurentowicz, so he was trash. But Cobb going out on loan, Mascara going out on loan, I'm not a huge fan of Mascara. He does come in and occasionally have a phenomenal goal in him, which is why some people still like him. But me personally, every time I watch him play, he's just kind of lazy, doesn't really track back very often. Apologies for the change. I kept seeing an ad pop up whenever I looked over at the screen, and it was distracting me, so I would imagine it might distract some people, so up there goes another one. Cool. Getting back to this, Abram was a player I never really thought was that good. I think he just didn't have enough pace, didn't have enough quality about him as a center back. The fact that he was our backup was pretty embarrassing, so I don't have an issue at all with him leaving. I do think it's kind of ridiculous that we ended up just buying out his contract, so essentially we paid him to leave instead of maybe getting some money from him. So the money involved there is kind of ridiculous. Now looking at the 2 outgoing transfers that I disagreed with, first of all for Morales, this one to me seemed pretty ridiculous, but I'm assuming there was already some stuff in the works before he had that really good match against, I think it was Charlotte, that he came out at halftime, because he had a phenomenal first half. Really did a good job back there, made a lot of great game-saving challenges, and then comes off at halftime, and then we concede 3. I don't think it's totally just because of him coming off. I also think Deila switching up the back line in the way he did, moving Edwards inside, was also a dumbass move. But it did almost seem like Deila knew Morales was leaving because he was gone only 2 days after. So it almost kind of felt like he had a great first half performance, and Deila said, "Ooh, we don't want the fans to get too upset when we sell him, so I'm just going to take him off now so he doesn't become like a club hero. Then we sell him to one of our bottom part of the table rivals. I don't want fans to get too pissed about that, so let's just take him off now." But we did, as you can see here, we got some decent money from him. Still doesn't make up for the fact that he looked good. He looked like he had some potential in him, and now we've sold him to another team in the league. And while he's not played much, he's already scored a goal. And if suddenly Montreal's fortunes turn around, I don't think they will, because one center back is not going to suddenly change how they're playing. But if he puts in some good performances for him and helps them maybe get above us in the table, the boardroom's going to have a lot of questions to answer. But the other one down here, Noah Cobb going out on loan, don't have a total issue with it because I do think he needs some more time. But first of all, you're loaning him to another MLS club. If he's not making it in our team, what makes you think he's going to play for another MLS club? But he's a young defender who I think does have some potential. He's had some good matches, so I don't have an issue with the loan. It's more so where he's going. But finally, we will take a look at these players that have come in, because I actually did find some stats for them, which I know stats don't tell the whole story, and I'm typically not somebody that looks at stats in football, because I know sometimes you don't really get the full picture. However, we'll start off with Mihaj first, because he is the defender that's come in, and he's looked pretty solid in his first few appearances. Again, the only part of the game that I saw against Necaxis, or however you pronounce it, the only clip that I saw was the one where Williams gave the ball away, and Mihaj managed to track the guy down and poke it out for a corner, which then, of course, we concede from. But it showed he has that grit and desire to want to get back and make that last-ditch challenge. And you can see here, decent blocks, shots blocked, passes blocked. So I think that does show that he is good at trying to get in the way of shots. He is good about trying to cut off passes. His tackling could use a bit of work. And you look at this, not really great as far as tackles won. His percentage of dribblers tackled, only 65%. He doesn't lose a whole lot of challenges, but it does seem like he's more so a defender that's going to put himself in the way of shots rather than a defender who's going to be one-on-one with an attacker and manage to shut them down and keep them from going past him. But the other part about his game, which I'm sure will excite anybody who enjoys seeing us pass around the back, got a lot in terms of possession. Touches in the penalty area, the defensive third, take-ons attempted, does pretty well there. Successful take-ons, same. His carries, distance carried, and his passes as well, you can see. I mean, pretty high passing numbers for a defender. So he's definitely a defender that's going to be good with his feet, which I think is similar to Williams. And we are a team that likes to keep a lot of possession in defense, so I think he's going to be a good fit there. And I think so far he has shown he's a pretty solid player. I don't think he's the finished article. He hasn't completed 90 minutes as far as I know, so that of course is something that needs to improve soon. But now getting into Berachal, or however you pronounce it. As you can see, defensively decent. I wouldn't say it's phenomenal. His dribblers challenged and tackled, all of that, it's pretty good. Interceptions is pretty high. Clearances, mid. Doesn't make any errors, which is nice. But you're looking at how many blocks does he have? Not many. How many tackles does he have? Not many per 90. So these are decent defensive stats, but not phenomenal. But the other concerning part about it, outside of the fact that these are pretty average numbers for a defender, you look at his possession stats. Pretty awful. He does not get on the ball very often, does not attempt take-ons at all. Carries, very, very low percentile. Like you compare it to Mihaj here, 38.14. For him, it's 16.59. So not even half of what Mihaj does per game. Miscontrols and his dispossessed numbers are not that bad, but his passing. Look at this. And for a defender as well, most defenders, their passing statistics are not great already. This is compared to other defenders. He's in the 1 percentile of passes completed, attempted, completion percentage, passing distance. Like again, I don't put too much stock in stats because the stats don't always tell the whole picture. But you look at Mihaj's passing, pretty good for a defender. 46.79 completed passes, 84% passing completion, 24 completed, 76%. That's just not good for a defender that's coming into a team that likes to keep a lot of possession in defense. Now, he is only coming in on loan. Maybe he won't stay around for long. Maybe he's just here as another option to give us. But I will say, looking at these stats, not too excited about this one as far as the way we like to play. I don't think he's going to fit in that well. But could be wrong. Could come in and just be a defensive beast back there, not really having to rely on his passing very often. And so we just managed to lock it down because he comes in and shuts it down. The final thing to look at is Afonso coming in. There is no scouting report for him because, as you can see here, when he was 22 in 2024, he had 11 matches played, only started once, 247 minutes, so not even 3 whole games worth. This season, 2025, 3 matches played, 1 start, not even a full match completed. I even looked to see if he played any matches in the Club World Cup. He did not. So we are literally getting a guy from Inter Miami that is one of their scrubs. Now, granted, he could come in and be one of our better players because we are not great right now, but attack is not really where we're trying to improve. We do need a little bit of numbers because we have gotten rid of a lot of the backup players that we have there. But this to me just seems like a silly pickup, especially considering we spent 190K for this guy. Well, euros. So apologies that turned into a bit of a ramble. I'll try to cut it down as much as I can. But all of that to say, we have not done well in the transfer window, once again. I don't think we've improved. Our fullbacks are still trash. We need to improve our fullbacks 100%. But as far as our center backs, Mihaj seems like he'll be pretty good. Barakal, I don't think is going to be that good, but he could prove me wrong. And then Afonso, I just don't think is that interesting of a pickup. He feels like he's just going to be a backup option for us. So in conclusion, this whole video leading to my main point that I wanted to make with this video, which will probably be the title of the video more than likely, is that for all the Atlanta United fans out there, for anybody supporting this club, anybody that wants to see them do well, we have reached a point now where we have to finally look at it and go, enough is enough. Like, we have been in decline ever since Martino left. We have not found the same heights again. We've not been as good. De Boer was the beginning of the descent. We had one decent season with him when we still had some of the good players left over from Martino's time. And then as he kind of moved some of those players on, it just kept getting worse. And we've not found a good manager since. Heinze tortured the players. Pineda, it was way too early for him to start his first job at a club like this that was in crisis. And now Deila is a joke. Same problems every single match, keeps making changes in defense, keeps giving up goals, and then asking the question, why are we giving up goals? I don't think we've done our job in the transfer window. We still have a little bit of time, so hopefully we can look to try to improve, like I said, fullback area. I also do think we've got to find a way to move Guzan on. I appreciate everything he's done for the club, but there are some matches where you look at him and go, we need to get somebody else in there. We need to get a different type of keeper because it's kind of the same problems with him every match. He's not moving the same way that he used to. So I do think it's time for the fans to finally start, bringing protest signs. Start boycotting some of the matches. I know some of the season ticket holders will probably still be there because, well, you've already paid for it. But we've already started to see those empty seats growing as we've gotten worse and worse throughout the season. If there was just one game where it was a completely empty house, I think that would really send a message. I think that would show, hey, we're sick of this. And you want our money? You want us to keep paying to come watch this team play? Do something about it. Make the proper changes. I don't know how high up it goes. Lagerwey, I know he's going through a bit of a tough time right now, so I'm not going to really discuss him and what he's done so far. But Henderson's come in as the new technical director after Bocanegra, and I don't see anything he's done that's different than what Bocanegra did. It feels the exact same. We're still not improving where we need to. We're still bringing in a manager that's not capable of doing anything with this club. So I don't know if Henderson needs to be moved on as well, but there just needs to be a lot of changes. We need to change how we're doing our business. We need to change the types of players that we're bringing in. We need to improve the team. We need to get a manager that knows what he's doing. So I hope you guys enjoyed that rant. If you didn't, then I'm not sorry. This needs to be said. I've been saying for years, and all these optimists and fans in the club that just want to see the bright side and want to go and put their little pom-poms on and go team. Yeah, those guys, every single time I've criticized the club for the past 4 or 5 years after Martino left, after we stopped seeing success with De Boer, every time I made a comment, always had fans coming back, oh, just shut up. You're so negative. Such a pessimist. We're doing fine. We're not doing fine. Even when De Boer was winning stuff, I saw the problems that were starting to arise. And they weren't fixed, they weren't looked into, and it's just grown and grown and grown, and now we've reached a point where it's going to take a massive overhaul. It's going to take a massive change at this club. Somebody coming in, ripping up the whole thing and saying, we need to start over, because we are in the pits. But with all that being said, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What are your thoughts right now on the club, on Deila, on the players? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe. Future Atlanta United maybe talks. Don't know how many more videos about them I'm going to do this season. But until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. And I'll talk to y'all later. Peace out.